Our last video is focusing in on perceiving oneself. Who are you? This is a lot of detail, and there is no possible way for you to grasp all of this in a short 10 minutes. So I'm just going to highlight some of the basic concepts to what to expect and what you will be studying in this chapter. I'm not going to go over a lot of the details. You can study that as you're working through this chapter, but so this is more of a highlight. Okay. One of the things that's really interesting as far as perspective goes is the 6-person concept. There's actually 6 different perceptions in this particular scenario. How I see myself, how someone else sees themselves, how I see them, how they see me, how I think they see me, and how someone else thinks I see them. Did you process that? It's actually very complicated, and all of those are different perspectives. They are not all the same. And who would have thunk that between these two people there were 6 perspectives? And so that actually helps you expand your idea of perception. So this section on perceiving self is very complex because there's lots of self words that are easy to get confused. And I have a slide towards the end of this PowerPoint that might help break it down a little bit more. But we're going to talk about several different aspects, and a lot of it falls under the umbrella of self-concept. So self-concept is the overall understanding of who you are. It's a stable set of perceptions that you hold about yourself. What is unique? What makes you similar or different to others? It's how you view yourself. It's something that happens over time, and as I said, it's pretty stable. Self-esteem is how you feel about your value or your worth. So it's more feeling-based, your talents, abilities, your skills, and how you feel about them. If you have a bad hair day, it could affect your self-esteem for that day. Maybe not. Some people don't care about their hair, but right, it could affect somebody's self-esteem, right? And it can fluctuate up and down fairly frequently, whereas self-concept is relatively stable, more an underlying foundation. Okay, and your self-image is the picture that you have of yourself. Those are just a few of the self words. So to get a better understanding of this concept, I like to look at money, finance. A self-concept would be basically a secure, limited risk type of investment. Like you can have a certificate of deposit, which is you lock in your money for a certain time period and you're guaranteed a certain percent or 0.5% interest, right? There is nothing to lose there. Where if you had money and you were investing it in the stock market, right? Even if you don't understand the stock market, you've seen it on TV or in movies, right? It goes up and down. It could change second by second. And our self-esteem can fluctuate like the stock market. It is feeling based. It can rise with a compliment or fall with a criticism. But anything that's over time actually becomes part of your self-concept. So these are a few of the self words that you're going to encounter in this chapter. We're going to explore a little bit more about self-concept and some of the different perspectives we have of self in the next few slides. So let's just quickly move through those. There's an explanation of how your self-concept develops through 4 basic means that I have listed here. You're going to read about that. Sometimes we question whether we have one self or many selves, and if you really wanted to be more theoretical or philosophical, a philosopher, William James, identified several different components to self: material, social, and spiritual. I don't recall that that's in this textbook. I might have used that from another book. You'll have to look. But I do have a sort of funny video of this concept from Big Bang Theory. I do like that show quite a bit. There's lots of good examples of what not to do and how not to communicate in that show. There are a lot of barriers to having an accurate self-concept, and it's really hard to assess your self-concept and with your perception. But how do you view yourself? Here's a person. You can actually see what she looks like, and you can see the different images that one has of themselves. And so there are barriers that we face about our self-concept and who you are. So you're going to learn about reflected appraisals. You're going to learn about we're resistant to change. We don't like to change. It usually takes effort and work, and it's hard. We do have a self-serving bias that affects how we view ourselves, our self-concept. Self-fulfilling prophecy is something that you probably have heard of before. If you tend to think a certain way, I don't think I'm going to do well on that exam, you're more likely to not do well on that exam. I'm not going to do well on speeches in this class. If you think that way, you're more likely to not do so well on speeches. But it's not only self-fulfilling prophecies, these can be imposed by other people. So if somebody else told you you were stupid all your life and you believe that is part of your self-concept, that would be considered self-fulfilling prophecy, even though it's imposed by somebody else. And my response to that would be, shame on them. You are not stupid. Here you are pursuing an education. Now, could you have done some stupid things, behaviors? Yes. But some of those behaviors are not who you are as a person. And so self-fulfilling prophecy could be not just what you are telling yourself, but what other people are. Stagnant thinking, and we get stuck in our thinking. That would be stagnant thinking. And self-talk. This is huge. The things you tell yourself have a huge impact, and we'll spend more time on, you'll learn more about it in this chapter, but we'll also learn more about this when it comes to public speaking, because what you say to yourself makes a huge difference on your anxiety and your nervousness. The next several slides walk through these concepts. Reflected appraisal, social evaluation is listed here. You're going to learn about that. Self-serving bias, more on self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll read through probably about a paragraph on each of these in your chapter. How we're resistant to change, examples of self-talk, stagnant thinking. And then there's a section on how to improve your self-concept and self-esteem. And so these would be things that you'd be putting in your tool belt. Things like self-reflection, learning how to ask for feedback or seeking feedback, becoming more mindful, reframing, changing your thinking, right? You can even use perception checking with yourself. Sorry, I forgot about that. We slip and fall and crash. I forgot about the audio. Right? There's a little more on being more mindful, and again, reframing. Okay, so you'll be studying those tools so that you can try to become more accurate with your own self and your perspective. So things for you to consider. Do you think you have a healthy self-concept? Is it accurate? What do you think some of the biggest barriers are to perceiving yourself accurately? And how do you think that affects your communication with others, and with whom? Good questions you might want to think through. There is a section in this chapter all about identity management. You do have the ability to influence how others perceive you, creating that image, that first impression, for example. We pay attention to this when we're preparing for a job interview, right? And so there's a section on identity management. You'll learn a little bit about your presenting self. Excuse me. And that's how you present yourself to others, how other people see you. That could be face to face. You do have a presenting self on social media as well. Is how are you perceived through social media? Right? And so I have some tips on identity management. You're going to learn a little bit more about that when you read through that section in the chapter. But I also give you an explanation on self-concept and how that ties into behavior. And so here's two examples, more of a negative and over here on the left and a positive on the right. Here's your communication style and who you're communicating with, what the behavior is, how other people might respond, and then how you perceive that. And it really is almost in a cycle. And so this I find to be helpful, is how this ties in with our communication and how it ties in with others. And then this particular slide introduces you again to more self-words, self-efficacy, self-adequacy. But this image here divides it up and breaks it into these concepts here under cognition are about our thinking, concept, our self-concept, our self-esteem, which is feeling-based, but our feelings are a result of our thinking, and self-efficacy, things about how we assess ourselves. Self-actualization, self-adequacy, self-denigration are all assessments, evaluations of ourselves. And then behavior, self-presentation, identity management would be here, even self-disclosure is also here. So this would categorize some of those self-words for you into different categories. Then that might be helpful as far as processing this information. And then finally, I have some tips on identity management in the workplace. That's where the self-presentation comes in, how you present yourself. And we do have to actually manage our perceptions. Not everything you think, not everything you say, not all of your behaviors are appropriate in a workplace environment, which I know a lot of people don't understand that, but there's just some things that are not appropriate. Ties back into Chapter 1, is it appropriate and effective? So that's what you're learning about in this chapter on self. It's a lot. As I said, this is a heavy chapter, a lot of material, but I'm sure you can learn more about yourself, your perceptions of yourself. You can learn to be sort of the best you can be, borrowing from the old Army motto. But evaluate yourself and who you are and how you think of yourself and how you feel about yourself. And you can work to change those things that you don't love. And you can be better at the things that you love about yourself. You can become better and strive to grow in those areas as well. So here's to challenging yourself and increasing your perceptions of both yourself and others.